Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. Hi there. Thanks for being here today. I know your time is precious, and I really appreciate you being here with me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. If you enjoy these conversations, please do me a solid and make sure you're subscribed in whatever app or program it is that you use to listen to the show. And also take a moment to give it a quick rating or review. All of these help with the ranking of the show, which helps it get more visibility, which ultimately means the messages in these episodes find their way to more people. I would be so grateful if you would do that. One quick housekeeping item before I tell you about today's conversation. I'm working on another Ask Me Anything episode. And if you have a question you'd like answered on a future episode, send me an email at beth@shesboldpodcast.com or leave a message at 877-280-5170. This podcast, as you likely know, is all about featuring bold women. Those who are forging their own paths to success, whether that is success in their business, their craft, their sport, or in accomplishing difficult goals. Today's guest has done just that. She set out to accomplish something pretty bold, pretty audacious, and just having the goal and working toward it was a big deal for her and something I think we can all find inspiration in. Okay, today's conversation is with Bonnie Crawford. Bonnie, along with 19 other women, recently went to Tanzania to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. Now, there are a number of things that make this group quite unusual, bold, you might say. First, the group size was 20. That's a lot of people all attempting a summit, and I know because I've managed a group of 10 up Mount Kilimanjaro. Second, this was an all-female group. Woohoo! And that is really unusual and pretty cool in my book. Finally, what really makes this group of women so unusual and what you might argue is the most bold part about their goal is that they are all plus-sized women. They are women who came together despite of, maybe because of, they are overweight. But they were all determined to not let that stop them, and together they were motivated to work toward their summit. Bonnie is no stranger to athletic activities and to dedicating herself to a goal. Now, she's an accomplished Ironman finisher multiple times over, and she spent more than a year methodically preparing herself for this trip up Kilimanjaro. As Bonnie points out in this conversation, a large percentage of our population is overweight. And I don't want to gloss over this fact, nor do I want to pretend that it's okay that we've gotten ourselves into this crisis. But I do want to recognize and give huge props to Bonnie and the women who were part of her group because they are leading by example and advocating for people to hike and embrace forms of exercise no matter their size. The message here is that you need to start moving no matter where you are in your body size or shape. There may be more obstacles for you, and she addresses some of them. But she and others who are putting themselves out there, not only physically, but also emotionally, are an excellent example of overcoming fears and doubts and physical issues to prove what's possible. With that, please enjoy this conversation with Bonnie Crawford. The group that you went to Kilimanjaro with was the Curvy Kili group, which is so cool.
Yeah, the Curvy Kili crew.
Yeah.
That's the moniker that we came up with for
I love it.
ourselves.
It's pretty catchy, too. I mean, it's an easy thing to remember. You know, it's pretty cool. Hey, I have a question for you just to kind of drop in here because I think what you and your group, and there were a total of 20, what you and your group did is bold, like not only trying to climb Kilimanjaro, but owning your weight as a group and as an individual and just saying like, this is who we are. This is what we're going to do. Like, I think that's pretty bold. And I think it's bold, especially in a world where shaming, you're out there, social media, there's been articles written about you gals where it can be a little scary, a little frightening. Did you feel that? And did you feel that as a group? Did you talk about that?
We definitely talked about that as a group. As we started the journey and decided that we were going to be very out and focused on the body positivity aspect of all of these plus size women going from 100 different places around the world, coming together to do this climb, we decided that we had to really own the fact that we were fat, we were plus size, we were curvy, as thus the name, the Curvy Keeley Crew. And, each woman on the journey came to owning that in a different way and from a different place. And so when the media started to pick up the story and started to cover us, we really started to get the first taste of that social media backlash and the firestorm of, do they have a Kentucky Fried Chicken on the top of the mountain? These women are crazy. Why would they ever do this? This is a heart attack waiting to happen. All of the terrible, awful things that people have to say.
Was that just like comments in the newspaper? Like
comments on the articles, occasionally comments on our social media page or on our Facebook page. For the most part, people were, I think, thrilled and encouraged. And we got so much positive feedback from women who were saying things like, I see myself in one of you, whether it was one of the women of color, or one of the women who identifies, in the queer community, or one of the women who was a mother or a nurse or an executive. Each of us represented a different part of society. And I think that each person that was watching us for inspiration or motivation, or just to say, you go girls, get up that mountain, were identifying with an aspect of where we were in the journey. But it was definitely hard. And there were a number of women in our group who had to fight the urge to engage the trolls. So that was a learning experience, I think, for many.
So you as a collective, not just you, but so that was discussion, like, let's not engage, let's just be quiet and let it come. Absolutely. And then it'll die out.
Absolutely. And it did die out. There were a number of women who wanted to get in the mix and get into the discussion about health at any size and the fact that you can be fit and fat. And we each had to come to our own decision about that. But as a collective group, and certainly from our own social media page, we opted not to engage in the discussions and negativity, and instead really try to focus on keeping the tenor of our group very positive.
Do you know of LaToya Shantae Snell?
I do. I follow her on social media. She's a badass.
Oh my God, because she does not let anybody get by with anything. And there are comments definitely that are thrown at her, and she just hits back.
Absolutely.
So I have to close my eyes and just go, whoa, like I can't watch it, but that's her,
Yeah.
And more power to her.
Absolutely. And it's tough, I think, when you have, the Curvy Keeley Crew was formed because there was a woman who had gone on an adventure and climbed Kilimanjaro and was consistently at the back of the pack, the last one to camp every day, had to leave camp early every morning in order to stay up with the rest of the group. But she found herself hiking the vast majority of the time by herself. And when she came off of the mountain, having reached Stella Point, which is the mid summit on Kilimanjaro.
Well, let's clarify. It's not mid. It is like it's at the top, but just like a few hundred feet away.
Correct.
From the top.
Correct. From Uhuru Peak.
Be
super close.
Do not be mistaken that it is not 9,000 feet. It's something like 18,000.
18,800. Yeah. Very, very close to the top. So she made it to Stella and really felt like she came down the mountain and wanted and really, I think, yearned to have had that experience with women that were like her, that kept her pace, that had the shared experience of living in a plus size body. There are a myriad of things, from finding sleeping bags that can zip around a woman that has, some solid hips and a big ass, to finding jackets that can zip, finding wicking performance gear, waist belts that you can fasten around a bigger stomach.
Well, I hadn't even thought about all those other things. I think, like, quite frankly, I just think of the physicality of it, that it's just more difficult. But I didn't realize, sure, you've got all these other things to contend with. There's probably just a select number of companies that provide that kind of product.
There are. And women like Shantae, women like Jenny Brusso, who runs Unlikely Hikers. There's a woman named Sam, who's a climber here that lives in Washington. They are working with companies like REI. They're working with companies like Columbia to expand their plus size lines, as well as to really start to highlight women of color and women of size in their campaigns, so that it isn't just the Curvy Keely crew that's out there saying, yes, you can be plus size, fat, whatever word you'd like to use, and you can also be outdoors. The outdoors is for everyone. Because when you don't have the gear, it's often the thing that keeps you, whether you're fit or ready to go for a 1-block walk or a 1-mile walk or a 50-mile climb up Kilimanjaro, if you can't feel like you fit in the community, in the outdoor community, it's very difficult to take that first step and get out there and enjoy the beautiful world that we have around us.
You brought up a good point about whatever word you want to use. What is your preferred word? Do you care?
It's funny because I generally have always said I'm plus size, but I would rarely have ever, prior to joining the Curvy Keely crew, have identified myself with any word that was related to my size. And I think I'm still one of the members of the group. Many of the women are like, we're fat, woohoo. And I'm like, yeah, I don't prefer the word fat. I'm coming to terms with it. That's definitely been a personal journey, I think, for me through this last 18 months of being part of the team. But for me, I think plus size is probably the best descriptor, because there's a broad spectrum of plus size, and it's not weight specific or size specific. It's just like, you're plus size. And anyone that looks at you goes, yep, you are plus size.
Yeah. And it's probably, I guess it could be, but I think it's one of those words that couldn't necessarily be thrown at you, that it's not necessarily derogatory, but fat can be thrown around as very derogatory, depending on how it's said and who's saying it too. But plus size, it's more like a fact.
Exactly. I am plus size. The fact is that the vast majority, more than 60% of American women, are considered plus size by the numbers. People used to think, oh my goodness, you're fat or you're plus size when you're a size 10 or a size 12. The reality is the average American woman wears a size 16. And that is continuing to move up as we have processed foods and we have all of the other things that can contribute. I also think that people are exercising less, and there's such a stigma around, if you're exercising, you must be trying to lose weight. For us in the Curvy Keely crew, weight loss and weight was never part of the discussion. We were there to move our bodies, to get out into the outdoors, and to tackle this very, very significant mountain at 19,341 feet at the size that we were, in the shape that we were. And we certainly worked our asses off for months and months and months, hiking and training and stairmastering and yoga and Pilates and all of the rest to get ourselves as physically ready and mentally ready to tackle such a huge challenge. But weight and weight loss was never part of the equation. And I think that is, at least for me, part of what made it really a positive, because it was like, yeah, I'm at the size that I am, and I can go out and I can hike up Cooper Spur. I can climb Dog Mountain, which are, big hikes in the Oregon area where I live. that's something that I'm doing and I'm capable of doing regardless of what size I am or what weight I am. And people, I think, can respect the effort, but there are those that will see you, and this happened to each member of our team while we were training, who see you on the Stairmaster or see you on the treadmill, and you're bigger, so you're sweating, and maybe you've been on there for 2 or 3 hours at that point, and they come up to you at the gym and they say like, "Good for you, girl. Like, I'm really proud of you for getting out there." And your instinct is, get the F away from me. Mm-hmm. You don't know my story. You don't know why I'm here. And many of the girls in our group would use that as an opportunity to educate, to say, "Thank you so much for the encouragement. I'm training to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and I've been on the treadmill for 4 hours now. Really appreciate." Or to say, "I understand that you want to be encouraging when you see a plus size or a fat woman, but that can be seen as a negative. It can be seen as a shaming because you feel like this is probably the first time that they're there. And you are thinking that you're encouraging them, but really you're just reinforcing that they kind of don't belong, and it's a shock for you to see them. And so you want to encourage them to continue. And instead it discourages them from coming back." So
is it better not to say anything?
I think it's better just to smile and be friendly. "How's it going?" I always like to start with, "Hey, what are you training for?" Assume the positive. Assume that everybody there is training for some, they're training to take their grandkids around. They're training to climb a mountain. Don't assume that they're there trying to lose weight. Or conversely, tell your story about your sister or your granddaughter who worked out really hard and lost 50 pounds, and good for you, because then you're telling that, fat woman on the treadmill, you should probably keep trying to lose weight.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about that kind of as a segue here, if you don't mind, about losing weight, because I know at one time you had lost quite a bit of weight, and then you went on to do, I think, more than one Ironman. Is that right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So we'll just talk about that, kind of that process, where you were at the time, and then let's just go right into the Ironman.
Into the Ironman years.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a family where, we always had struggled with weight, but were active. I was a dancer, I was a gymnast, I was a swimmer all through high school and college. And I grew up in Hawaii during high school. And so I saw the big Ironman World Championships. I volunteered there.
Were you on the Big Island?
On the Big Island in Kona. And it was this mystical, magical, coming together of the elite of elite athletes. And it was awe-inspiring, really. And I, went to college here in Portland, Oregon, and decided to continue to swim. I had always been a swimmer and loved the water over my entire life. And then got into the rush of, college and going to a private liberal arts college where it was hard work. And there were a lot of extracurricular activities I was participating in, and gradually the activity level tapered off, but you're still eating like you were a, hardcore swimmer, swimming 3,000, 4,000 yards, a day, a few times a week in practice. And so gradually the weight crept up. And over the course of time after college graduation and a few years passed, I decided, I am going to walk a 5K. And there's a midnight 5K in Portland. And I thought, I can walk around the block. How hard can a 5K be? So I went out and I was in completely all cotton, little Keds tennis shoes. And it was, January 1st in Portland. And I'll never forget, I finished second to last, only ahead of a man pushing his wife in a wheelchair.
Oh, no.
But you know what? I finished that
did.
5K.
Yeah.
And I thought, that was crazy hard. But it also felt really good. So I continued to walk, and I was at the time really trying to focus on healthy eating and balanced eating. I was in doing Weight Watchers at the time, and I decided, this is back very early, pre-social media or early 2000s. And there was a group of women who suggested that we all do a sprint distance triathlon. And up here in Seattle, there was a all-women's triathlon where a legendary Ironman finisher, Sally Edwards, would be the final finisher, and no woman would have to finish last. So she was the final swimmer, final biker, final walker or runner. And I looked at those distances and I thought, well, I've been a swimmer my whole life. 800 yards, half a mile. Okay, that's easy. That's like no big deal. A 12-mile bike ride. That's probably going to be pretty tough, but I could train for that. And then a 5K, which I had just walked ahead of the man and his wife. So I decided I'm going to do a triathlon. That sounds like a great plan. And I finished well ahead. I was not even close to being the final finisher here in Seattle and had an absolute ball. And it just spiraled from there. The next thing, it was like, I want to do another sprint. And then I want to train for an Olympic. And do you think I could do a half Ironman? Surely that would be crazy. And at that point, the focus wasn't on losing weight. It was on just the intense amount of activity that I was doing. And I'm an organizer, and, in my role as a software executive, I came to that via project management. So I am very organized and detail oriented. So I created spreadsheets and lists and training plans to ensure that I was going to be as ready as humanly possible for any scenario that could come up. And I hit that first half Ironman, and it was a disaster.
Where was it?
It was in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was only a year and a half after the first sprint. So I was undertrained. It was 100 degrees outside, and they were taking the finish line down before I got there. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, wow, I have to rethink this. And so I went back to the drawing board, did a couple more years of smaller distances, and then prepared to do a better half Ironman, which I did in upstate New York in 2006. And that was an awesome race. I was prepared, I was trained, I was ready. And that then led me to make the decision that I was going to attempt an Ironman, which for those of you out there that have never done an Ironman or heard of one, it's a 2.5-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then a full 26.2 marathon, all in one day in 17 hours or less. And I thought, I don't know that I have it in me to actually finish in the time amount that you have, but it's something that I've always wanted to do since I was there on the Big Island watching these athletes, and I'm going to go for it. And I went up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where they had a beautiful Ironman race that was held every year. And I did half of the course, half of the run, half of the bike, just to get comfortable with the very hilly nature of it and make sure I was able to feel good enough about the half to know that I should sign up for the full. And I volunteered there with the athletes and got to know the town and put my name in and signed up. And then did a lot of just casual training. And then in January of 2007, I started the Ironman process, and I met with a nutritionist, back to the weight question. And I said, I've lost all this weight just through the course of doing exercise and eating really cleanly.
So that, I think I had read that you had lost 150 pounds. Is that right?
Yeah.
And was that all during that training process?
During that 4-year period. Yeah. And so I sat down with her and I said, I'm really concerned. Ironman training is like a second full-time job. It's 25 to 45 hours a week of intensive training for 6 months. I'm not sure how I break the healthy mentality that I've gotten myself into with, focusing on, I need to have this many, ounces of protein, and carbs are at the time were, definitely like, let's have lower, less carbs, more fruits and vegetables. How do you fuel for an Ironman when you're in that sort of diet weight loss mentality? And she said, you have 2 choices. You can finish the Ironman, or you can continue to lose weight, but you cannot do both. And I said, well, I really want to to finish the Ironman. And so she said,
So wait, so the idea was that you wouldn't be losing weight if you were training for the Ironman?
that if I was keeping that mentality of calorie counting and, keeping complex carbs as like, oh, I'm not, or even simple carbs, like I can't do a lot of sugar, or it was all of that I can't mentality when I was in those early years. And to break myself of that and know that I was going to need to fuel 200 to 500 calories an hour for every hour I was training. And that was like, I couldn't hoard those calories so that I could, have a piece of cake or a piece of pizza later on, right? And that's the mentality of people that are dieting, that are trying to actively lose weight. And so her focus for me was, if you're going to focus on the Ironman, then you need to focus on fueling your body and nothing else, not on weight loss, not on dieting. And sure enough, I said, well, that's my desire, is to finish the Ironman. I just sort of switched into that mentality and did it all very scientifically. It takes me X number of grams of salt plus carbs to make sure that I'm not, throwing up on the bike or whatever the case may be. And I still lost weight, ironically, another 40 pounds
with all
or
that
so.
Training, of course.
Yeah. But we're going to get to that because that's salient to all the training that we just did to climb Kilimanjaro. So as I finished that first Ironman, and I finished well within the time limit, 16 hours and 40 minutes or thereabouts. So I had a few minutes to spare. It was absolutely like a drug. It was addictive. You are in this beautiful town, in this majestic place in Coeur d'Alene with this, picture perfect lake and high mountains and forests. And it was an incredible experience. And I knew I had been pacing very carefully and doing everything to ensure that I had enough in me to finish. I had never run a marathon before the Ironman, and everyone said, well, you can't do the Ironman if you've never run a marathon. And I said, well, I kind of had been carrying around a lot of weight for many years. So I've got some bad knees, and I'd had knee surgery in 2005. And so I thought, I'm not going to push that. I'm going to do 16 miles. And what's 10 miles in the grand scheme of things? Once you're at the end of the Ironman, you could do 10 miles. And that's what I told myself, and that's what I did.
Meaning you walked the final 10.
Oh, no. I was running all the way to the end.
Oh.
So I used a method called the Galloway method, which is the
right, Jeff Galloway. Mm-hmm.
Yep. He does, a few minutes of running and then a minute or 2 or 3, whatever your interval is of walking. And I started that. I did that for every training run. And I was able, the first marathon was, I think, a 6.5 hour marathon at the end of the Ironman, which I was super happy with. And the second year, so I was a glutton for punishment. And I said, I had so much fun. This was such a joyful, wonderful experience. And I was so conservative. Now I want to do it where I know that for the rest of my life, no matter what happens, I'm an Ironman. I've finished the race within the time limit. Now I want to leave everything I have out on the course. And I just want to go for it. And so I went back to Coeur d'Alene in 2008 and had an absolutely incredible race. Cut almost an hour off of my time and ran without the intervals the last almost 5 miles because I was just feeling so great.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're on adrenaline.
I was like, I am doing it. I can break I can get under 16 hours, which for those of us that are at the back of the pack, there's even in the Ironman world where 16:59:59 is still an Ironman finish. There's this sort of classism of like, well, if you haven't finished the Ironman in 12 hours or 13 hours, you're not a true Ironman. And I can't tell you the number of very, very fit 5% body fat looking guys in their spandex who were throwing up on the side of the road and saying to me like, we can still make it if we walk it in. And my watch beeper would go off with the next interval. And I would say like, I'm sure you can. I'll see you at the finish line. And off I'd go running with a big smile on my face. So So that was the second Ironman. And then I kind of felt like I need to branch out. I want to challenge myself, do a few new things. And so I did a few half Ironmans at high elevations, and then really started to kind of transition into a new phase of my life, which was a heavy travel job, and starting to move into a management role. And I decided I was going to go for Ironman one more time. I thought like, well, I need a goal. I need something. I really love having a personal challenge that I'm working for outside of my day job. And I trained and was all set to go in 2011 to do my third Ironman. And, being a tracker of everything, keeping spreadsheets, I knew that in 2011, I was swimming, biking, and running faster than I had in any of the prior years. And so I really felt like, this is going to be an epic, epic Ironman. And every year that I had done a race, I was doing it from a place of joy. My husband would say to me before every race, have fun. That's the goal. It's never about the finish. It's just about getting there and just enjoying the day, because who knows what can happen on that day. And everything that could happen and go wrong on the Ironman in 2011 did.
Where was that one?
Coeur d'Alene again. I like to be able to have metrics. So I wanted to know how fast or slow I was going against the previous time in the same course. And Coeur d'Alene is one of those communities that just embraces the athletes. And it felt sort of like a second home, because I would go up, 4 or 5 times a year to train on the course. And I knew people at the local coffee shop and at the local bike shop, and it just felt very comfortable. And 2011 is famously known for the year where, by all accounts, they should have canceled the swim, because we had an absolutely incredible amount of snow that year. And the water temperature was just sitting right at 52, 53 degrees, which even with a full wetsuit and double caps and booties is, for a lot of athletes that are very low on body fat, is very close to hyperthermic when you think about being in the water for 1 to 2 hours.
Do you know what it is normally? Like on the previous Ironmans?
Previous years, it was 71 and 67.
Oh, so huge difference.
Massive difference.
Wow.
And they didn't cancel the swim. I had a cold all week, so I was fighting, kind of battling that, was just like, it's going to be fine. I've biked with a cold. I've ran with a cold, like no big deal. The water was so cold and I used so much energy. I was in the water for almost 30 minutes longer than my prior years.
That had to be miserable.
Oh, and then you get out, you're and
you're freezing,
frozen, brain freeze. I couldn't use my fingers. The volunteers are dressing everybody in the changing tents. And then I'm just coughing up all this water, and I get through the toughest hills on the bike course and stopped to go into one of the little portalets and get some water at an aid station. And I was like, I am miserable. Like, I am just not having any fun. Mm-hmm. I'm cold.
I'm not doing the thing I'm supposed to do. Have fun.
Exactly. And I said, I'm going to bail on this. Like, this is just not what Ironman has ever been for me. It's about the fun. It's about the joy. And I'm not having any of those things. But I also knew that my competitive side would probably not let me pull myself out of the race. And there are time checkpoints where if you haven't finished the first lap of the bike, they'll pull your chip. Or if you haven't finished, the first half marathon, they'll pull your chip. So I sat at the aid station and encouraged other athletes and chatted with the volunteers until I knew that a safe amount of time had passed where there was no question I would not make the cutoff, and then they would have to pull my chip. And they were so sad, because for a lot of people, it was maybe their first Ironman, and it is devastating to get pulled out and miss one of the cutoffs. And so they were apologizing all over themselves. We're so sorry. We can't let you go on. And I said, it's okay. This is my third one. I've done it twice. It just wasn't my day. It's totally fine. And that strangely was sort of the end of my triathlon phase of life. I've never raced again since that Ironman. And I think that the reason, as years have passed and I've contemplated, is I did everything that I ever wanted to do in that sport with that community, and it had just sort of lost the fun and the joy. And I was starting to travel, like I said, and getting a lot of joy out of that. And so I sort of shifted gears and decided, like, well, triathlon will always be there, but I think I've sort of run my course with it.
When you had lost that weight, and I'm asking this because it's something that LaToya had said to me, and she said that when she had lost so much weight, she wasn't satisfied with herself, and she was getting feedback from people that, wow, you look great, you look so healthy, and she just thought, I'm not happy, and I'm the same person that I was before. Did you ever have any of that when you had lost the weight?
Yeah.
So what was the experience like for you?
It's funny to look back on that period of time, because you associate yourself with, like, I was gorgeous. Like, I look at a picture of myself from the Ironman years, and it's like, I actually went and did the dunk tank because I wanted to know, like, what my actual body fat was. I was down to like 10% body fat, which was really unhealthy for an active woman.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see like my ribs and my collarbones, like almost like emaciated. And this is where weight and size sort of comes into play. Even when I was at such a low body fat percentage, I was still almost 200 pounds. And wearing a size 12, 14, even at that low of a body fat percentage, and considered by, the world around me to be gorgeous and fit and like at the peak of athleticism. But you're right. I was in this constant struggle of like, well, people now are giving me positive feedback and saying like, oh, look at you, you're so beautiful. And like I have these wonderful pictures of me in this like fabulous dress. And it's like, I have a completely flat stomach, and, my arms are like so small and like have great muscle tone. But I was starving myself effectively to try to maintain that. And because then you get into this state of fear where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not training for the Ironman anymore. So how likely is it that if I have a cheeseburger or a piece of pizza, that all of a sudden all of that weight that has been lost is going to come back on? And what was, fascinating and also a little scary to me, and part of what led me to where I am today, is that when I finished the first couple Ironmans and went on to that 2011 race where I pulled myself out, I was still at a fairly low, healthy, considered by all to be healthy weight, but really not, because I was at a low body fat percentage, but high still on the BMI type of chart. And I was continuing to train and to do a lot of fitness activities, long bike rides, half marathons in the year or two post that last Ironman. And I put almost all the weight back on within like 6 months. It happened almost overnight. And at the time, I was absolutely terrified. I went to every doctor. I had every test done because I couldn't understand how all of this work over 4 or 5 years could be undone in 6 months when I was training just about the same amount. And they couldn't figure anything out. That every test, every thought, no one could figure it out. And so then suddenly it's like, well, if nothing I do, if it doesn't matter how few calories I eat or how much exercise I do to get back to that relatively unhealthy but societally accepted, weight and size, then I'm just going to stop worrying about it, because it really isn't making a difference. I'm just going to try to focus on being happy and, focus on traveling and taking on new challenges in my professional career and, spending time with my nephews and my niece, those kinds of things that are going to reflect and bring you joy. But I never acknowledged myself in that new world as a plus size woman. I would never have said like, hi, I'm Bonnie and I'm part of a plus size team climbing a mountain. Never in a million years. Because when you're in the world, like you said, you're relatively frequently shamed for being bigger. Something must be wrong with you. You must not be exercising. You must be eating a pizza every day, and I just kind of had to block all of that out mentally and say, like, I'm just going to focus on being joyful and having, really great life experience.
Well, we all have that though too, right? I mean, we all have our own kind of, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, like cross to bear in terms of our own imperfections and what we see about ourselves, and living in a society right now where perfection is rewarded and it gets the most likes and the most follows. And if you don't live up to that, then you feel bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, it doesn't matter whether it's extra weight or, fill in the blank,
Right.
it's just that's part of the society, the shaming society right now.
Yeah. And I think that for me, it was like I got an opportunity. I was, like I said, traveling and focusing on my professional career, my goals, and I got an opportunity to move to Australia and to take a fantastic assignment in, really one of the worst places you could possibly go, which is, it was a crazy, wonderful opportunity. Australia is a magical place. And I had been
You're joking when you say one of the worst places
right?
in the
It was
world.
like a hazard assignment. Oh, please don't send me to the most beautiful place in the world.
Yeah. Where were you located?
My husband and I lived in Sydney, and I had been traveling there for the prior 4 or 5 years on business, opening our offices and doing a lot of things. And when the opportunity to actually relocate there came up, it was milliseconds long decision to jump at the chance. But Australians, I really think, embody as a society what we are all, without even acknowledging it, striving to be as Americans. So they focus first on family and on health and the outdoors and on like just acknowledging and living joyfully in this place of beauty that they get to call home. And there's very few cars. They're taking transit everywhere. They're walking. There's, going to the beach and surfing and swimming and biking and all of these wonderful outdoor activities. And there's no high fructose corn syrup allowed. It's just everything is fresh and wonderful. And the sun is out. Of course, you have to slip, slap, slop and put all your sunscreen and hats and everything. But it was a transformative experience because all of a sudden, with all the walking and the food that was not processed and not filled with all these chemicals, I wasn't losing weight, but I felt healthier and happier than I ever had before. And I got the opportunity to go spend some time in Southeast Asia and trek around. One of the things that had always been on my bucket list was Angkor Wat and the beautiful temples in Cambodia. And I, without training or really doing anything at all, I said, well, I'm going to go and do what turned out to be 5 to 7 miles of traipsing through the jungle temples in incredible hot temperatures.
Oh, I've been there. I know.
Yeah. The humidity, and because of the cultural norms, you need to keep your shoulders and your knees covered, which means you can't even be wearing like sleeveless
and a tank top or yeah.
Oh my gosh. It was exhilarating. And at the end of every day, I would come back to my room, and I did this by myself. It was the first time I'd really done like a long solo trip. And it was incredibly challenging, but also I felt like, wow, like I'm doing that. Like I'm trekking around, the back country of Cambodia. And it was that experience that ultimately caused me to be connected to the Curvy Keely crew. I was talking to a woman online who was getting ready to go on her first adventure to Cambodia, and she was plus size, and she was concerned about whether or not she would be able to do the walking. And I said, look, I I used to be an athlete. I was an Ironman many years ago, and I'm plus size, and I just got back from Cambodia, and it was incredible. And I did, and she said, okay, thanks for the encouragement. I'm going to go for it. And the woman who had made it to Stella Point and was forming this team of women had seen my post, and she reached out to me and she said, I think you should consider signing up for this climb and joining our group to go to Africa and climb Kilimanjaro. And I thought, are you crazy? Like, what are you talking about? I mean, I am a Northwesterner. I've lived here for, almost 25 years. But I was never a hiker or a camper. I had never set foot in Forest Park, I'm ashamed to say, before these conversations about Kilimanjaro. And I didn't realize until I actually accepted the challenge and started training how much of life in the Northwest I had been missing out on.
Because you weren't out hiking.
Because I was doing my triathloning or I was swimming. But because I was not just taking advantage of the outdoors, which is everywhere for us in the Northwest, because I, didn't have a focus on having hiking boots and knowing that you could just hop in your car and go to the gorge and, hike around on these gorgeous trails and, all the camping opportunities, I wasn't in that sphere. And so as a result, friends were off doing activities and I just was never getting invited because they knew Bonnie's version of camping is like a 5-star hotel. She doesn't do
4-star.
Yeah,
4-star.
Yeah, if I'm roughing it, I'm going to a 3-star with really good air conditioning, and
Wi-Fi.
And Wi-Fi, yeah, critical. After the hallelujah moment of getting 3G while we were coming off the mountain in Africa, I've never learned to appreciate good Wi-Fi more.
So you made the transition after figuring out that you could hike and that you could do these longer distances walking in Cambodia. What was the training process then? Once you jumped on board the Kilimanjaro trek, what was the training process like for you?
Well, as with most everything in life, I tackled it with a spreadsheet and a lot of lists and a very methodical what might I experience on this 50-mile hike to 19,000 plus feet? And I set about to practice and train for every aspect. So I started just 30 minutes on the treadmill at a 15% incline to assess whether or not I was even going to sign up. Because at that point, I was still very skeptical about whether or not it's one thing to go and do 3 or 4 days in Cambodia and come home at the end to an air-conditioned 3-star with Wi-Fi, comfortable bed. It's another thing to do that for 7 days straight and throw in altitude, and then you're doing it while also sleeping in the mud sometimes.
And eating unfamiliar food.
And having to deal with going to the bathroom on the trail and all of those things that were going to push me well outside of my comfort zone. So I contemplated for a couple of weeks and hit the treadmill and really tried to assess with 15 months of training, would I be able to get to a point where I felt like I could accomplish the climb? And after a few weeks of treadmill time and, 10%, 15% incline, I decided, okay, I'm going to sign up. I'm going to go for it. And then I started pouring through the internet, every book that I could read about Kilimanjaro, every Instagram post. And it turns out that in Portland, we have an altitude training facility called Evolution Healthcare and Fitness. And they were an incredible find for me. They have a room with all kinds of treadmills and Stairmasters. And first key thing for me was that the average treadmill only goes to a 15% incline. But on the summit and on a few of the other parts of the climb up Kilimanjaro, we would be experiencing 20 to 30% incline.
Which route did you take?
We took the Rongai route, which is the northern route from kind of the border of Kenya. So it was a more gradual walk up, But we were also doing a significant amount of rock climbing, which caught us all by surprise when we finally started the adventure. And that was the one thing I didn't train for. So there were a lot of tears on day 2.
By rock climbing, is it more, because I've done the Mashame route, it's more kind of bouldering, right? You're really kind of having to climb over larger rocks. So you're not looking for footholds necessarily like a climber might.
Right.
But you are having to get over big rocks.
Exactly.
Not to minimize the difficulty, because I understand.
Right. And for a plus size woman to do that kind of bouldering up like a rocky kind of waterfall type of situation, you can imagine that you, don't have the flexibility in your hips, knees, etc., to be able to make the first foothold and then pull yourself up.
Right.
You're also pulling up on average an extra 100 to 150 pounds, potentially over an average sized hiker or climber. And the part that really hit home for me is that I was always kind of very aware of what I felt comfortable with. And so I would take my sweet time some of the days to make sure that I felt comfortable with making a jump across a gap in the rocks, or that I was comfortable that I had a good handhold or a good foothold to hoist myself up. But the guides and the staff from Trek to Kili, which is the guiding group that we went through, were so patient and wonderful. And they were very prepared for the fact that, like, if we slipped, they weren't just grabbing a 150-pound hiker. They were going to have to grab potentially a much heavier hiker. And I never felt unsafe or uncomfortable, even though there were a few days for all of us on the mountain where we just wept because it was a terrifying, you're climbing in the pouring down rain on slippery rocks, and that you have to finish that day to get to the next camp.
And so you had bad weather along the way?
I think we had incredible weather, and then we also had our fair share of bad weather. So we had 50-mile-an-hour winds on summit night.
No.
It was awful. I truly believe that is probably what held back the vast majority of our group from making it is the winds. We had pouring rain, we had mud, we had hail, and then we had these 4, 6, 8-hour windows where we had absolutely glorious sunshine.
Well, it's kind of like Seattle or Portland. You're here because of the 2 months in summer, and most every other day is like today. It's like blustery, windy. We had hail a little bit earlier. So you live for those beautiful moments.
Absolutely. And that's really what we experienced on the mountain. I think with all the training I did, and I hiked dozens of hikes in the gorge, in the Columbia Gorge. I hiked on the Washington side. I hiked we did as a group, we met a couple of weekends over the course of the year to prepare. We did training and slept in an alpine hut in the backwoods of Colorado at 12,000 feet, so we could all experience what altitude might feel like. We did snow camping and snow hiking in upstate New York. We did a weekend where the whole group came and stayed in Portland, and we hiked the Pacific Coast Trail, and we slept in our altitude facility for a couple of days. And then for me personally, I spend about half of my time traveling for work. And so anytime I wasn't traveling, I was in the altitude gym or out on a trail. Although I will say, once I got to November with the rain and the snow and ice, I decided it wasn't worth the risk of a possible fall and an injury that close to the March trip to go outside. So I actually did all of my hiking on the treadmill. And over Christmas break, I did the entire route. So I did every single day, the distance and the altitude, the elevation gain to practice so that I would feel really comfortable going onto the mountain. And the thing that was so surprising to me, certainly we had a range of sizes. I was probably one of the more plus size of the women in our group. But I was also really, really hardcore about my training.
Do you think you were the most hardcore about it?
I was probably the most diligent and sort of over-prepared, perhaps. But we had women who approached the training from a variety of ways. So I think everyone prepared as well as they could for their circumstances.
Yeah. Not to take anything away from everyone else. My
for
question,
sure. For me, I think that everyone in the group was like, oh my gosh, you're doing so much training. And to which I would have to say, like, remember, never hiked or camped before I joined this group. And in some cases, significantly heavier than some of the other girls, just in terms of like being able to climb myself up those rocks, which I didn't know were going to be there. I wanted to make sure that I was as prepared as possible to give myself the best shot at a good adventure. But for me, it was never about the summit. It was about getting to Africa. It was getting a week of incredible bonding with like-minded and like-experienced women, and to really separate myself from the day-to-day, like, influx of mails and emails and texts and all the rest, and just dive into nature. And it was an absolutely incredible experience. And the goal was get to the starting gate, healthy and trained and feeling ready. And every day was a new challenge. There were days where we hiked for 8 hours, climbed 3,000 feet of elevation in 4 or 6 miles. And I felt awesome every single day. Totally shocked me. We got to the base camp, which is just below 16,000 feet. And that was where we were going to summit from. And it was crazy windy, and we were worried about our tents blowing over and all of the rest. And
this is early March.
Early March, yeah. And within an hour or two of getting to the base camp, I was just knocked on my ass with altitude sickness, which was really, really heartbreaking for me, because many of the women in our group had started experiencing symptoms on day 2 or day 3 or day 4. And here we are the evening of day 5. And I had thought it was all that altitude training. And I was like, I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
No dramas.
You escaped it.
I thought I escaped it. And it hit me so hard and so fast. And not with symptoms that I felt like were manageable. Like I didn't have a headache. I wasn't like throwing up, but I was hallucinating, and I was having trouble stringing words together. And I felt like just complete and total exhaustion and dizzy and nauseous. And I was like, there are 50-mile-an-hour winds out there. I feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience. I am heartbroken that I'm not going to be able to even attempt to get up to the summit. There's no question in my mind that it would be a terrible and potentially dangerous situation if I had gone up. So I and 6 other girls, for a variety of personal reasons, stayed behind and didn't attempt.
Did everyone make it to base camp, even though that they had altitude sickness prior to that?
We had one of our team members that went out via a helicopter on day 3.
Ooh.
And she was okay, but just felt like that was the right decision for her.
They couldn't get her down any other way? Have her
because
return?
We had just gone up the crazy, ridiculous, scary rock fall.
Okay.
So it would have been worse going out back down the rock fall. So she went out on day 3, and then the rest of the group made it to the base camp despite a myriad of altitude.
So 19 of you to the base camp.
Yep.
And then what does that leave?
12.
Yeah, 12.
12 went up, and 10 were turned around or made the decision to turn around at some point over the course of the night. 2 of our awesome ladies made it to Gilman's Point, which is the first of the 3 summits. Mm-hmm. And at that point, then we're told, you've made it to Gilman's Point. You have officially, summited, and it's time to get back down.
Right. And it's probably, if you are going slower, if they were going slower, there has to be a turnaround point because you need to get back down. And then once you got back down to the base camp, still that day you have to leave and travel another 3 or 4 hours down to the next camp, right?
More like another 6 or 8 hours, it turned out, down to the next camp.
So that's one of the critical things and that's why you start at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night.
Exactly.
On no sleep, and you're hallucinating.
Yeah.
Just because you've got lack of sleep.
And these women who made it all the way to Gilman's Point, Autumn and Kathy, are absolutely like incredible, because the average person makes it all the way to Uhuru Peak, which is the very, very tippy top, in 6 to 7 hours. And then they turn right around, 2 or 3 hours, they're back down. And it's kind of like it's a big deal, but no big deal. They were up to Gilman's in 9 hours, 4 hours to come down, and then another 4 to 6 hours that it took them to get all the way back to camp.
So that's 18 hours or something later, right? Yeah.
At least. And the thing that was really tough, and I can only imagine how tough it was for them, but definitely for me, I was feeling so great all the way up. As soon as we woke up the next morning after the summit night and we were all ready to start going down to the lower camp, I was feeling a lot better. And the first couple miles descent is across what they call the saddle, which is just a dusty dirt road, basically, cutting between the two peaks, Kilimanjaro and Mwenzi. And that was like, I'm still feeling good. Like, I got this. It's, we're on our way down. We're almost back to the real world with, I can talk to my family and tell them that I'm still alive. And then we had to descend the opposite side of the mountains, Rock Falls. And that was 4.5 hours and 3 miles of absolutely, for me with, knee issues and having had knee surgery, I was terrified. And by the time I got to the camp on day 6, I was basically a basket case.
This is going down.
Down.
So is that where you're pretty much, it's like you're skiing down on scree, like on just shale,
So that's coming down from the summit that you're skiing down on the scree.
Okay.
But this section after you cross the saddle is like between golf ball and toaster size rocks, all crammed together, all loose, and at between an 8 and 20% down angle. So you are, if you can picture it, gripping your poles as tightly as possible, and you are carefully and deliberately planting your feet so as not to twist an ankle, twist a knee. And I thought, okay, a mile of this, and then 2 miles of this, and it's hot and you're still above the clouds. So you are just baking. And at a certain point, I was gripping so tightly. I had blisters on the tips of my fingers, blisters on the tips of every toe, even though I'd had no issues with blisters going all the way up, all of a sudden going down. And then you can imagine I am bawling my eyes out at like mile 2 or 3 of the rocky part, because I'm just exhausted from the mental energy of like carefully watching step by step.
And you don't know when it's going to end.
And you have no idea.
Yeah. You think it's going to go on forever.
I loved our guides and our team. They were so good. But every time you would say like, please, and you're crying, and
just
it's like
10 more minutes.
Please tell me where the camp is. How much further can it really be? And they would say like, oh, Mama Simba, so close. You're so close. You said that to me an hour ago.
I know.
Oh, man.
They're trying to be encouraging, but I know how frustrating that is.
It really was. But I tell you, the thing that I took away from the mountain experience was really the Tanzanian people and the joyfulness and the gratitude that they display in everything they do. I mean, here's a country and a group of people that are living in what we would consider abject poverty. Lots of places with lack of running water and indoor plumbing and, intermittent electricity. You're operating on the EDGE network, and you're, rejoicing when you get 3G on your little cell phone. And yet they would give you the food off their plate or the shirt off of their back, because that's just how they are and who they are. And they are so encouraging and joyful and positive. I mean, I thought when I would see the pictures of people like, oh, the guides are singing to you. And I thought like, oh, that seems kind of like a tourist stunt, right? Like, that's just for show.
They're happy for you.
But they are so happy for you. And they are singing you into camp, and they're singing next to you on the trail. And they're like, unguvu, which is like strong. And they're saying, one stop to the top. And like they're singing the, Kilimanjaro song to you, and, song about a frog with no pants, which was kind of hilarious when you try to translate it. And here they are, they're racing up and down the mountain with, the porters are carrying
40-pound packs or something.
At least. Yeah. And then they're carrying chairs and mattress, like
toilets.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It was incredible. And here you are like just struggling.
And they're in flip-flops.
Well,
running up and down.
Our team is not, because they're part of the Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project. So they're certified. They have proper gear. They're only allowed to carry a certain amount of weight.
Exactly.
And all of that, because it's very exploitative by a lot of people. But the travel company that we went with, Woe Travel, was founded by two women who had climbed Kilimanjaro, just randomly happened to meet, and they decided, we want to bring a group of women out to this mountain and other mountains. And because of the woman who had started the Curvy Kili crew, they've now expanded to encompass plus size travel. So they have a team that's going to Peru to hike Machu Picchu.
Oh, I was just going to ask you if you've thought about Machu Picchu.
It's my next thing. I wish I could go this year, but it's a little too close to that 3-week vacation I just took. So next year, I think I would like to do the Sultana Cay Pass and Machu Picchu. And then they have a whole group that's going back to Kili next year with, there will only ever be one Curvy Kili crew. We were the originals, but a couple of the women, Kathy, one of the women that summited with us, and who was my tent mate and an amazing woman, she and another woman named Andrea from upstate New York will be the group adventure leaders on future plus size trips. So really excited for the mission to continue, and some fun stuff. And I never anticipated that it would be a life-changing experience, but man, Africa, what a place.
Yeah. Well, but it strikes me that you said something similar about Australia, though, too, that you observed this lifestyle that they were living in Australia. And I mean, I have 30 years of travel behind me, and I haven't been everywhere, but I've been to a lot of countries, and I observed the same thing. I've spent about 8 months in Australia, and someone just recently, like in the last week or so, asked me, has there ever been a country where you wanted to live? And I said, yeah, Australia. And it was because of that same thing. It's like, I mean, it's easy because they speak English, right? So it would be an easy country to transfer over to, but for visa reasons, it never happened for me. But years ago when I first traveled there, I observed that same thing where they, kind of, to use their language, they would knock off at 4:00 in the afternoon, and then they would go to the beach, and then they would, throw the shrimp on the Barbie, and they would hang out with their family and play on the beach or go for a walk or do whatever they wanted to do outside. But you're talking about too, this lifestyle, this happiness that you have observed in Tanzania, where it's like everybody else has this figured out, kind of this happiness thing. It passed over very quickly, but you had a comment earlier where you said it's what we strive for, yet we don't strive for that. What we strive for is working 12 hours a day and being on our digital devices, for the other 6 waking hours of the day, and then not getting enough sleep and caffeinating up and then doing it all over again.
It's a hamster wheel that we live on. And I think, and I really, look at this as I have gravitated toward the technology field. I've been in that field for 20 years. And so that is one of the most intensive places where people are on the hamster wheel. You're working internationally. You're
traveling a lot too.
I travel a lot, but I will tell you that it is one of the things that I think we all, and especially for those people that eventually end up in a leadership role, it is imperative as a leader to show firsthand your teams that vacations and work-life balance are important, and to not just give lip service to it, but to actually do it and model that behavior. And I am super thankful to my company, Reach Now, which gives us a ton of vacation time and encouraged me as a senior executive in the company to take 3 weeks off with no communication and go and do this life-changing adventure. And it's certainly something that I think as business people, whatever business we may be in, it's something we should be mindful of and encouraging of. Put the phone down unless you are literally curing cancer, like saving someone from a fire. I feel like there are boundaries that we can put that are healthy. There are opportunities to encourage people to go out and pursue whatever their, outside of work pursuits are, whether that's, being active or being artistic or serving the community. There are a lot of ways to kind of build that happiness and that joy. And I think it's something that as a society, we all can strive to do better for, because certainly the Australians, and now I've learned the Tanzanians, have it figured out. They are just grateful and joyful in everything they do. And I think coming back to the States is something that I'm trying to hold on to and do more of.
Before you were training for Kili and you were in the as you called it, phase, which I think is a fabulous way to think of this, your hiking phase. Did you realize that there was something outside of work to like a goal to move toward?
I think it's funny because in the Ironman phase and then in the Kili phase, I was definitely focused on like an end point. In the intervening years, the goal was really getting both travel experience and getting professional experience. And my goals were much more professionally centered. How do I gain experience as a manager? How do I move into a more senior role? How do I gain an experience working overseas and actually then living overseas? And so I was very much focused on the intentionality of building my career. And I think really less focused on something that was like a personally focused goal. And what I found, having sort of revisited those Ironman years with the Kilimanjaro trip, is I am a better leader. I'm a better wife. I'm a better aunt when I am balancing the hectic nature of leadership role in my professional life with a personal goal, because it creates that balance. Like, although it can be challenging, and there were definitely times where I was like, it's 8:00 and I'm still at the office and I have got to get to the gym, or it's 5 a.m. and I've slept for 4 hours because I just flew in the night before. I've got this goal and I want to be successful in my attempt of it. And so therefore I will prioritize going and doing that hike. Or, I got to the point at the end where I would wear my workout clothes to the last meeting of every day that I would have at the office on days when I needed to get to the gym, as like a visual signal, like this meeting is going to end on time if we can help it. And it never really did, but it was okay. But it signaled to my colleagues that many of them have families that they were trying to get home to. And so I'm going to help you get home to your family because you're going to help me get to the gym. And away we'll all go, and then we'll be happier for the effort.
So where your happy place is in terms of juggling that. And you mentioned Machu Picchu and the Salcantay.
The Salcantay Pass.
Salcantay Pass. How far out is that before you do it?
Well, I'm thinking of doing it in the summer of 2020. So I am definitely one of those people that I've learned needs to have a goal, but also recognizing that it's a significant strain on my team, my husband, my life, my friends who probably miss me to do something right away. So the rest of the year is going to be filled with business travel and some adventures with my husband. And then I'll transition into preparing to go down to Peru. And I'm excited because Peru and Machu Picchu was always on my bucket list. Ironically, Kilimanjaro was never there, but it will open up the sixth continent for me. Mm-hmm. And I am excited because I'll get on to South America, which I've never been to, and see alpacas, which are one of my spirit animals in the wild, in real life. But then it also sort of like just pries open that door to Antarctica a little bit. And there's no question in my mind that I will be in Antarctica at some point.
Yeah. So having that goal not until 2020, is that close enough for you to feel like you can juggle that happiness between kind of the training or whatever else it is you have going on this year? Or because for me, it just seems like I have to have something that's
soon.
Like, so more in my face. Like, okay, what's next?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a struggle, quite honestly. I told myself when I got off the mountain that I would give myself 30 days of just like pure R&R. If I feel like going for a walk, I'm going to go for a walk.
Are you still in that 30 days?
Still in the 30 days. I have another week and a half I'm going to Vegas with a girlfriend next weekend to just like do the last of the like full blown R&R. And then it's okay. The 30-day sort of cocooning is over and I want to, get back into a regular routine. I am really excited because last summer we had 2 years ago in Oregon, the really devastating Eagle Creek fire. And last summer, most of those trails had not reopened yet. And they have since reopened last fall when I was kind of taking my I'm too freaked out in the pouring rain to go outside and risk slipping and injuring myself. So I really want to do a lot of the iconic and well-known and awesome view hikes this summer with friends. And then I've probably got to find something to put on the list of adventures to do. I think a year out is probably the right amount of time. Ironmans, I never really trained more than 6 months out because you do get training fatigue. And I definitely believe that started to happen with Kili. So we'll see. I'm kind of taking it day by day and week by week. But Machu Picchu is definitely the next big adventure. And I've also, been really following the last year and a half a lot of these thru hikers that are out on the PCT and the
John
AT
Muir and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not really a backpacker, but then I wasn't a hiker or a camper either.
Never say never.
Never say never. So there is a high likelihood that I will put my toe into the water of well, let's see how it feels to backpack for a day or two. My dad is a huge backpacker, and I'm sure would absolutely love to do a backpacking adventure together. And I think there's just something about being kind of by yourself. One of the things that was really interesting on Kilimanjaro is, of course, you're around guides and porters and 19 other women, and there wasn't a lot of solitude, but there was one day on the trail where I was just feeling in a groove and everybody had stopped to take a break. And so I just kind of kept going up. And I thought, being one of the people that was kind of the mid to the back of the pack of our group of 20, I felt like, well, surely in the next 10 minutes, the group will catch me again, and I had my headphones in and was just singing, all my musicals that I had on my Kili playlist. And, 15 minutes passed and 30 minutes passed. And the next thing you knew, I had been out there before they caught me almost 2 hours. And it was one of the best periods of time because you're above the clouds and it was like this crystal blue sky and you can see all of Kenya below you because we were hiking up the northern route. And it was just like, whew, that was intense. That was awesome.
It sounds great.
Yeah.
Did you have a coach at all when you were going through this? I know you mentioned, I think for your Ironman years, you had a nutrition, someone helping you with nutrition. Did you have somebody?
I had a team of people that I like to
19
think
of them.
Yeah. Well, I had certainly the Curvy Keely crew, and we all wouldn't have been able to do this if it weren't for each other and all the day-to-day encouragement. But I would say, although I didn't have like a specific coach, I had a personal trainer, Brian from Evolution, who was working with me on strength training. And then I had my team that was kind of like the body wellness team that worked in the altitude room, and then massage and physical therapy, Brad, DJ, and Adam from Evolution. And they were like all surrounding me with this advice and guidance, and like they would come in and visit me when I was doing 6 hours on the treadmill in the altitude room.
Unbelievable, yeah.
And so it was that, like the encouragement of the team, that honestly I really believe, like I am a very mentally strong person, and when I like set a goal, I'm going to do everything I can to achieve it. But it takes a village, and outside of the Curvy Keely crew village, the team that I just lucked into, that we have this facility in Portland at Evolution, they were amazing. And then, of course, my home team, my husband, Preston, who was like, filling up my water bottles and, getting me like the special SIM card that would work on Mount Hood when I was like climbing Cooper Spur. And just doing all the little things to make sure that I and juggling a busy job with a busy personal life, that I was able to kind of do that. And then holding down the fort for 3 weeks while I was traipsing around Africa.
Oh, gosh, that's great. Is there anything that we haven't touched upon here that you want to talk about?
I feel like we've covered a lot. I mean, I think going abroad opens your eyes and your horizons to so many things. And I think that there are beautiful places to see in America. Absolutely. From the Gorge and, Mount Rainier to Zion and
all the national parks.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Get outside wherever you are. But I think
and no matter who you are.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. If I can go and start literally by walking a mile to the Witch's Castle on the Maclay Trail in Forest Park. And I thought that first
time... Forest Park, that must be a park that's near Portland?
It is. It's the largest urban park in America next to Central Park.
I had no idea.
And it is a gorgeous gem that I can't believe it took me 25 years to find. But there's a little trail, and it goes, uphill, a mile or so to this landmark called the Witch's Castle. And you see dogs and kids, and that first time that I got into Forest Park and hiked back in January of 2018, right after I'd made the decision I was going to go to Africa, and I thought like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. This 1 mile trail is just killing me. If I can start from there and then end up making it all the way to 16,000 feet on Kilimanjaro, anybody that it just wants to try, it's all about getting out there. And, there's the hashtag opt outside. And I think that is a really important one. And for those people in the Northwest and California, around the country, there are groups that have, spun up, Fat Girls Hiking, Unlikely Hikers, that are doing group hikes that are going at a pole pace, which is slowly in Swahili, and that are, bringing in people of different communities that are maybe not seeing themselves in the outside world. And, for me, that's identifying as a person of size. It could be a person of color or someone in the queer community, like any of those people who maybe don't feel comfortable going out into the outdoors. It's for everyone. And I would just encourage each and every person to get out there. And then also like talk amongst yourselves, talk to the retailers that, where you're like, I'm having trouble finding a sleeping bag that can zip because I am a hippie, lady. I will say that REI, I had to buy a double sleeping bag because there was not a single sleeping bag that I could get to fit around my hips. And we talked a little while back about the whole like losing weight while still doing the Ironman. So I trained for 15 months, which included hundreds of hours of training. And I never lost a single pound, not a single pound. But I lost multiple sizes, so many, in fact, that when I went on my first camping trip last spring with the girls on the Appalachian Trail from the Curvy Keeley crew, I had to buy that double sleeping bag.
So you were gaining muscle weight.
I was switching fat with muscle, and I bought that double sleeping bag. I used it all spring, summer, fall. And my husband and I were at the movies over Christmas vacation, and he had put the armrest up, and he was like, I've been trying to tell you that I think you're getting smaller. He's like, look at how much space is between us. He's like, there's almost a foot worth of space. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking. And then I was like, whoa, you were right. And so I went that day after the movie to REI, and I found the widest single sleeping bag that they had, and I got in it on the floor, and I was able to comfortably zip it. And I was like, this is the best day of my life. And the REI manager that was in there helping me, I'm sure thought I was a little nuts. And I said, you don't understand. I'm climbing Kilimanjaro in 3 months, and I've had, to get a double sleeping bag because I couldn't zip a single sleeping bag. And here I am now. And that sleeping bag was awesome. And I slept in it every night, kept me nice and toasty on
What's the company, the brand?
Big Agnes. Yeah.
Yeah, those are good bags.
Good bags.
They are really good bags, especially for high altitude and cold weather.
Absolutely. And they are extremely lightweight, because even though we are plus size and everything we wear or use is bigger and weighs more, we still were only allowed to pack 33 pounds for the porters to carry. And so we were making critical decisions like, can I get away with 2 pairs of pants? We had to fit everything in 33 pounds. And that is not a lot of weight when you're trying to pack for 7 days.
Yeah. One quick question here before we do wrap up. Something that just came to mind is that, you're encouraging people to get out, which made me think of kind of the mental fortitude that it takes not only to get off the couch and to go outside. So for a listener who's like, I don't even have the energy to pick myself up and go out for a walk, let alone a hike. But then the mental fortitude that it takes to do 7 days on a trail. Where do you get that mental energy and that focus? And how would you suggest that somebody else tap into that?
I think it's being able to think sort of beyond yourself. So for me, it was like having a few mantras, things that would motivate me, like whether it was a YouTube video or it was a line from a movie or a song that, like, when I hear it, it sort of mentally triggers me to know that, like, I can push a little harder. I can push myself out the door. But I also think that part of it is just we are so bombarded with stimulus in our everyday lives that to be able to just, take a breath and have that silence and have that like internal dialogue with yourself, and to be able to really like think and just think about like, your family members or your pets or a place that you want to visit or a flower that you see outside, like being able to recognize that the motivation to get out, the mental fortitude to keep climbing is because it's a privilege. Like we are, like I used to say, I get to do the Ironman today. And, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to get to go to Africa and climb Kilimanjaro. And that's not something that everybody has the ability to do. And so I think just realizing how privileged we are, and the fact that there are a lot of people out there that, for whatever their circumstances, would love to be able to struggle with the choice to get off the couch and to go outside. And so I feel like it's, because we have that gift, it's our responsibility to use it and to get out there and challenge ourselves.
Like the man who was pushing his wife in the wheelchair. She would have given anything
exactly
to have been able to walk it or run it or hike.
Exactly. And so, and I think, I mean, there's no question that like training yourself mentally and having mental strength and having touch points and music that triggers you and all of those things, like those are all really important. But at the end of the day, it's really just about you. And I think recognizing that life and being able to be outside and to be active is a privilege that not everyone gets. And so let's get out there and do it.
I'd like to end these conversations by asking the guest, what does it mean to you to be bold?
I think to be bold is to push yourself outside of your comfort zone in a big and unpredictable way.
That is a beautiful qualifier on that.
Become a hiker or a camper at age 41 when you've never owned hiking boots or
51 or 61 or 71. Keep going.
Exactly. I cannot tell you. We had many women in our group who were in their 20s, 30s, 40s. We had a couple of women who were over 50 who were crushing it. They were passing me up on the trail. And we saw one of the guys that worked out with me for months in the altitude room, you know, in his 60s. I met a woman there one day who was in her 70s, and she was like, "Oh, I just, was on Kilimanjaro a couple years ago." And it's like, you can do, and I like to think for myself, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think that you have to choose to be bold. Like, it is an active choice. And there's a lot of reasons that people would choose otherwise, but there's nothing wrong with being bold and just choosing and then choosing joy. Like, when you're bold, you're going to be more likely to be joyful, I think.
That is the perfect place to end it. Thank you so much. Is there some place where people can find you or any organizations that you're involved with on social media, website, anything along those lines?
So you can follow me on Instagram at Bonnie M. Crawford, or follow our team, the Curvy Keely Crew, on Instagram. Lots of exciting opportunities, and stay tuned. I think there are many more mountains in my future.
Awesome. And we'll follow you through Peru.
Yes, absolutely.
Big one. Bonnie, thank you so much. Thanks for your time and for sharing and for coming up to Seattle today too. Now it's sunny out.
It is. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Great. Thanks. We've all told ourselves that we can't do something for any given reason, and I hope that hearing this conversation will get you to rethink your excuses, no matter what the story is that you're telling yourself. I mentioned in this conversation LaToya Shante Snell. I actually talked to her for the podcast as well, and that was episode 56. She has a slightly different view on being a plus-sized athlete, and you might also enjoy her take on it. You can find Bonnie on Instagram at Bonnie M. Crawford, and her Mount Keely or Kili Crew on Instagram at Curvy Keely Crew. For links to all the things we chatted about in this episode, go to shesboldpodcast.com, and there you will find the show notes for this and all episodes. You can also find those links and show notes in whatever podcast app it is that you use to listen to this. Don't forget to check out my Patreon page. It's basically a way for you to say, yes, I like what I'm hearing on the She's Bold podcast, and I'm willing to support the show and get some special benefits. When you become a patron, you unlock bonus content such as questions I ask of guests after we complete the episode, and those are fun to listen to. You can find out more by going to shesboldpodcast.com/Patreon. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook, and I'm WonderGal on Instagram. Ladies, you can join the Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/BeBoldGroup. You're going to love the positivity, the encouragement, and the support from that community, which is more than 2,100 strong. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the She's Bold podcast. Until next time, be bold.